What's up, everybody? Friday, so great to be with you. Another month, work your brand. We are here with another wonderful guest. Wherever you are listening today or watching, please say what's up. Let us know in the chat. Love to hear from you. Love to know what city you're from. Really makes it exciting for me and for our guests. So hit that up in the chat. And then today, y'all know that I keep bringing on amazing guests. I have been for nearly 2 years now. This is my regimen the beginning of every month. And today I have Al Dia. Is it Dia?
D, just like the letter.
I was like, I should have confirmed that in the pre-green room, Al D, which is I love that. What a good name, Al D.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, like very brandable, Al, okay? And we actually met through a mutual friend, Daniel, if you end up watching this. And we have a lot of similarities in terms of our beliefs around relationship building, being in corporate and then going out on our own. We're just kind of like very similar in where we are in our lives. And so I'm really excited for him to be here. He's a leadership expert. He goes and supports teams. Actually, you know what, Al? I think it would be better for you. I'm like, you know what? Why don't you talk about yourself a little bit, your journey, and just talk about your journey a little bit and how you got to where you are today.
Well, great. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for bringing me here today. I've enjoyed talking to you, so now I'm glad I get to share it with our conversations with the rest of the world. But for those who don't know me, my name is Al D. I'm a leadership development facilitator and a consultant. I also host a podcast called The Edge of Work. And what I like to tell people is that I try to help smart people become people smart and really help build those human skills they need in order to be better managers and leaders in today's world of work. And so my day-to-day, that means working with companies to develop the next generation of manager and leaders that they have in the workplace and working with organizations to help them attract great talent. But wasn't always doing that. Very much like you, Rachel, I started off on the corporate path, had a wonderful time working first as a management consultant, working at the intersection of technology and organizational change, and then spending some time actually working at the innovation forefront in terms of working in the technology industry, working at Salesforce and helping large companies think about how they can use new technology to work in new ways and to be innovative and nimble and agile. And then a couple of years ago, I decided to make a pivot into becoming a leadership development consultant, facilitator, keynote speaker. And I'm sure we can get into this at some point. While that is my job and what I'm doing today, a lot of the things that enabled me to do this happened a long, long time ago because I was thinking slightly about my personal brand and about the relationships that I was making and about the ideas that I had. And while some of the success I've had so far has been related to the hard work in the trenches that I'm doing every day, what I have come to learn is that being able to invest in some of those things, even if you can't see the benefits in the short term, can really pay off in the long run. And there are definitely some things I did back when I was working in the corporate world that are just coming to roost. But I'm so glad I did those things and so glad I woke up. And that's why I'm so glad you're doing your show, because the more that people can understand and think about these things, I think it's just going to put them in better positions to succeed.
Totally agree with you. I mean, okay, so let's start. So when you think about where you are today, 2+ years into your entrepreneurial journey, you think about what you just said, the sort of seeds that you were planting the decade plus before. What are some of the things that you did and you look back and it's like, wow, that has paid off for me?
Yeah. So I started my career working in a large management consulting firm. And one of the things that my managers and leaders always taught me was that in any conversation that you're going to be in, it's really important to have a point of view. It doesn't mean you have to be the expert. It doesn't mean that you have to be the authority, although that certainly helps. But you should always feel like you have something to say and something to share and something to contribute. And you should always be willing to listen. And so that is something I've really tried to pride myself on wherever I've gone. And I learned something early on, particularly working in a large organization, is that if you have quality ideas that you can back up with insights or stories or information, people want you around. And the degree that which you can share them oftentimes creates opportunities for yourself in terms of your own personal brand, as well as just opportunities to advance, opportunities to take on new projects, other things like that. So a big break for me was when I was an MBA student at UNC Keenan Flagler, one of the things that I did was I started writing my thoughts and ideas about my own MBA experience when I was in business school and how it was helping grow my career. Started a blog called MBA School. It still exists. And at the time, it was just a way for me to use my own creativity and to develop a point of view of my thoughts and just to share them with anyone who wanted to read them and who wanted to listen. And at first, it wasn't very many people, but eventually other people started taking notice. And eventually other MBA programs and other companies started asking me to come talk to them because they liked the ideas that I was sharing and they thought they were useful and relevant. And so that's just one example of back then, I was just pursuing something just for fun because I had some time and I was just curious about it. As I'm sure you can appreciate, it was during my second year of business school, maybe had a little bit more free time than perhaps I would have liked, but it was just a curiosity. But when I turned the curiosity into a point of view, when I turned the point of view and started sharing it, a whole slew of things started coming my way to the point now where 10 years later, some of my clients and some of the work I do maps directly back to getting those opportunities to just share my point of view and ideas 10 years ago.
Yeah. Ooh. Okay. So let's talk about the sharing of the point of view, because that is feedback I got as well when I was during my MBA and when my internship at Microsoft, and what they really appreciated about part of the reason why I got that opportunity, landed the full-time gig, was because I was coming in with fresh ideas and sharing and having a point of view. And it actually, Al, I remember a distinct time when I was holding back because people dynamics, don't want to ruffle people's feathers because maybe I felt like the new person, I was a woman, like there's all these different things that people carry in the workplace. And I was holding back, and my manager actually said to me, I hired you to shake things up. I hired you to say what you believe, because you know you have a fresh perspective. That's not everybody. I don't think most people get that kind of encouragement from their leadership. Maybe they do. You tell me, since you're on the edge of work. But like, if somebody is listening today and saying like, "Oh, I got lots of ideas, but nobody really wants to hear them," or "I don't feel there is a safe space."
Yeah.
How do you kind of get through that? How do you navigate it?
Yeah, sure. And you bring up a lot of good points. So the first I would say is that there are absolutely systemic structures in place that sometimes make it very difficult for certain voices to be heard. And that's a reality of the workplace that we are all in. And fortunately, there are some people who are trying to fight against that. And there are some leaders who do try to make space for all voices to be heard, particularly those that are traditionally marginalized. But that is a very lived reality of people. And I do not want to discount that at all. And certainly I have a certain amount of privilege in terms of being a male, in terms of what my voice enables me to entail. That said, what I can say, and what I do think is important to remember, is that, when you are working in an organization, there is, unless you're truly in a place where you literally have nobody, like period, who you can trust or you can turn to, there, you don't have to start big, right? Like there's always, assuming that, you have some relationships or some people, there's always a place to start. And I found, at least in my case, when I just started with a small group of people who I knew directionally either cared about the same things that I cared about in terms of the topic or the interest area, or perhaps had a similar role in some kind of way, that was always my starting point. My starting point wasn't to go up to the leadership to say, hey, here's what it is. It was always just to start small. And that's how all these things start, right? That's how I started with one blog post, which now has built a career for me in terms of using my voice for a living, right? You have to start somewhere. And so I recognize the reality that sometimes it's hard, particularly when you don't have a manager. And I do also think that there are bite-sized things you can do to start. So the first thing I would say is acknowledging that there are some challenges. Start small, right? Start with people who that maybe care about some of the same things that you care about and who are genuinely interested in hearing those ideas. I think the other thing that I think has always helped me, and I can recognize that this might just be part of my own just disposition, but I'm a naturally curious person who wants to learn. And I have always found that when I come with that mindset and that ethos, people are usually pretty receptive to that. Particularly when you're starting, you don't need to pretend, particularly if you're not the expert, that's okay. But I've often found when you come as a place of genuine, hey, here's what I'm thinking, or here's what I'm seeing based off my own lived experience, or what I've known from my experiences from the research I've done. Have you seen this as well? Or like, what do you think? Or I'd love to hear what you think. I think generally speaking, people appreciate their curiosity and their willingness to learn. And so even if you might be more junior, even if you might not be this quote unquote highest paid person in the room, I do think people respect people who are curious, who are trying to learn, and who are trying to share knowledge. And so if you can fall back on some of those kind of qualities, I think you'll find that people will genuinely want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. Kind of finding your people,
Right.
which is like kind of like life lesson too.
Yeah, sure.
Like your network is your net worth.
Yes.
And the brand that you put out there is either going to attract your people or repel them. And to be frank, like that's what I want to happen.
Right. Well, I mean, just to, for the audience to know this too, I mean, that's partially how we got connected, right? Because someone we both know, shout out to Daniel, who is the ultimate connector, but Daniel was able to associate the fact that both of us, had similar backgrounds, have similar interests, have a similar disposition of how we see people in the world and relationships, and connected us together, right? But that only happens, A, because Daniel's a quality human being and we need more people like Daniel, but also because of the fact that both of us have been putting signals out there into the world that we're the kinds of people that do X, Y, and Z. And so Daniel is able to make that association of, oh yeah, these two people definitely need to make. But that only happens because you and I have been being who we are and sharing ourselves to Daniel and to others for as long as we have. So it really comes in full circle in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point that you're saying, Al, and it really is ultimately about personal branding, which it always comes back to. You're right that I think that we have been we didn't even know. Okay, you started this blog, you didn't know where it was going to lead and how it was going to come to be, how now you'd be speaking and on stages. And so you didn't know that that's where it was going, but you followed a passion, you had a perspective, and you just kind of put it out there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel the same way about the way I started to activate my voice on LinkedIn and started to go on podcasts. And it's like leaving corporate and joining Stand Out Authority with my husband. It was like, I didn't know exactly what the heck we were doing. But over time, the message starts to kind of get more clear because you start to follow that passion and your voice, and then more clarity comes almost.
Right. And I think you brought up a good point too, of in your case, it wasn't that you knew definitively exactly what you wanted to say or what you wanted to do, et cetera. It's that you took a step, and then you took another step, and then you took another step. I often tell people, because I do a lot of work around career development inside organizations. I often tell people, look, like you can't think your way into a career. Like like at some point you got to do it. And I think that goes true for sharing your ideas, for trying to figure out what you want to be an expert in, for trying to figure out how to stand out. Like it's important. Yes. Like I think it's important, like as a general rule of thumb in life, to like think about things before you do them. And like you can't think your way into executing something. Like at some point you got to do the darn thing, and then you learn, and then it gets better over time.
It's so true. I love that. You can't think your way into your career. I got to be honest. I thought most of my way through my.
So I always say that because I did too. So I'm not.
Yeah, like we both have our MBA, like 2 degrees. We worked out, like there was a lot of thinking. Okay, Al.
Yeah. But
would you say, so as you're talking to people and you say that to them, do you think that like what helps in that process as maybe you're trying to get promoted? I mean, or career switching, if you're not thinking, then what the heck are you doing? You're feeling.
Right. No, for sure. And so I think it's a couple things. I mean, there's absolutely value in thought, right? In terms of, yes, like it was we're saying before, like I think you mentioned you're talking about your kids. Like I'm sure at some point you've told your kids at some point, yes, like it's really good to think before you speak, right? Like again, like life maxim, like yes, please. And quite frankly, if like more people did that, like maybe we would have more people with standout authority on valuable things than just all the noise that sometimes exists. And the same is true for your career. Being able to every now and then to take stock and to stop and just to say, what did I just do? What went well? what did I do well? What could I have done better? What do I want to do more of next time around? Being able to do that quick check-in, that has a lot of value in that. But unless you do something based off of what you learned from that, it's just good thoughts for the sake of good thoughts. And so I do think, to be sure, that the way that we work today, particularly in large and corporate environments, it is very easy to prioritize doing more than thinking or reflecting. And so I do think there's a blend that needs to be put in of yes, thought is important, but when it comes to actually achieving something, it's hard to just think your way into doing it. It's kind of this nice blend of thinking and doing, but ultimately, it's almost like a continuum. If you think too much, you're never going to get there. But doing without any thought oftentimes can lead you down a path that you didn't necessarily want to be on. And so when I talk to people, or I talk to managers who are trying to help their employees with their careers, or I'm talking to employees to help them think about their careers, one of the kind of frames I often give to them is this idea of the difference between a lightning bolt and a drumbeat, right? And so the idea of like a lightning bolt is like, I'm sure you've seen one at some point in time, happens every once in a while. It kind of happens unexpectedly. It's a big shock and a big scene, and you never know when it's going to happen again. And traditionally, I think a lot of us think of our careers and career growth as a lightning bolt, right? It's just this big thing that happens, you do it, and then you move on. A lot of the growth actually comes in through a drumbeat. Now, if you know a drumbeat, you know that it's just one little beat, it's just one little tap. But you also know that when a drummer strings a few of those together, it starts to make a nice little melody and it starts to build off of each other. And the drum beats, that's really where the career growth kind of comes in. It's through those everyday little things that you do, like taking the time to take stock, to think, reflect, and then to do the next thing, to take a little time to plan before you go and do something, and then reflect on it, and then do the next thing. And so that's really what I try to encourage people to do, is just to have more drum beats, because A, drum beats over time kind of add up to something much, much nicer. And B, the more drum beats that you have, the more times you can create those lightning bolt moments where these big things can kind of happen. And so that's how I try to reframe it to people in terms of trying to figure out, okay, how do I blend the thinking piece with the doing piece? Because you do need both.
You do. I think that's a really fun example. And what came to my mind is the law of attraction, and attraction has action in it. Yeah. And so, that we get to vision what we want, right? Which is thinking, but it is also feeling, right? It's experiencing. I think I'm where I am today. The more I certainly think through a lot, but sometimes the reason why I'm, I think, the most successful now and content and happy is because I'm actually thinking less and trying to release and stop pushing so hard. But there always has to be the doing. And I feel like so often, especially people that are not entrepreneurs and haven't made any sort of switch working for somebody else, they're kind of like waiting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, and that is the challenge and opportunity with entrepreneurship, right? Again, when we worked in big companies, right, you sometimes, not always, but sometimes you could wait a little bit to figure it all out, right? When you're in business for yourself, or if it's just a small business, you do not always have that luxury. And ultimately the buck, for better or for worse, stops with you. And so it really does. But I will go back to one thing that you said there, where you do feel now it is important for you to listen to your thoughts and your feelings. And I would guess part of that is because you've done a lot of stuff. And so as a result of all that activity and what you've done, you have many more insights into how to best move forward, right? And so unless you had done all that, you might feel differently, or you might have a different calculus for how this all works out. But that is like perhaps the way that I think you probably factor in the doing, even though you are leaning into more thinking and feeling.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right. It's like you have to have those experiences, the failures, not failures to me. I always try to think about it as learnings.
Yeah,
I'm doing that shift.
Yep.
The fail fast. I'm like, let's just learn fast.
I love that.
Okay, so you're working with companies, your podcast, The Edge of Work. I mean, what is on the edge of work? What's the deal?
Yeah.
We're like few years post COVID, everyone's remote. People kind of still seem, I don't know, meh,
Yeah.
more or less.
Yeah.
You tell me what sentiment I just know when I go to my MBA, my MBA crew, like very hit or miss if they actually enjoy their jobs. Some lost their jobs, getting new ones. I mean, what's your pulse on what's happening with employees and what can we do to make it a little bit better?
Yeah. So I would say yes to everything that you're saying. I mean, so a couple of things. I would say yes to everything that you're saying. And part of it is because we obviously, workplace is diverse, a lot of thoughts, opinions, and feelings. But I would say that what you just articulated to me, I have conversations with people each week about how work is going. And I can very much tell you from different parts of my life, all of those things are kind of true. What I would say is this. So the Edge of Work podcast, it's a podcast for leaders to help them think differently about creating a workplace that works for their people and really hones in on how do you develop and lead in new ways where you actually can get the most out of people and put people in positions to succeed that actualizes their potential and that helps you grow your business. And so the premise of the Edge of Work really comes from this idea. It's an Albert Einstein quote where he says, you can't use an old map to explore a new world. And my hypothesis has always been on this is that there is a better world of work that is out there and we see it in new pockets. But unless we change the way we think about work, things that were great and enabled us to have lots of prosperity in the modern workplace to this day, unless we rethink some of those fundamental assumptions and ways of thinking and ways of being, we won't be able to explore this new world because we'll be using an old map. And so what I do is I try to go out to bring on guests who are either leaders who are advocating for this new way of thinking about the workplace, or who are experts or researchers or entrepreneurs who are building things that are helping create this better world of work, to really bring people on the journey who want to create a better world of work, either for themselves or their people. And so that's why the podcast exists and why it's important. And why it's important to me is what you just said in terms of I have gone through a lot of my life talking to people about their jobs. And I have heard a lot of people who really, really talented, really smart, diverse people who've said, yeah, like work's fine or work sucks. And here's why. And I'm really fortunate that I've been in jobs where I felt alive, where I felt like I was contributing. And I think everyone deserves that right and that opportunity. And so I am trying to move the Overton window into realizing what work is and what it could be, and trying to find other people out there who want to do the same so that we don't have people who are saying to you or saying to me, my job sucks or it's okay. Like they are saying, hey, this is great for me and here's how I contribute. And so that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. What do you, when you're listening and talking to all these leaders, I mean, what do you think is one of the best things somebody, is leading a team here?
Yeah.
They're doing to bring that connection to work and really support their team?
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it really honestly is pretty simple. It's really asking your people what excites you and what motivates you, and how can we incorporate some of that into what you do each and every day. Mm-hmm. That's really all it comes back to. I think, look, like obviously there are certain aspects of work that we all just have to do, but if we can get at least part of our job to be things that excite us and that align to things that we're gifted at or that we enjoy doing, if we get a little bit of that each day, that should be a good start to helping us feel more motivated, more engaged in the work that we do. And also for a manager or leader, actually caring and giving a damn about your people and what lights them up and wanting to try to put them in positions where they can be successful. Like as a manager, that's probably going to make you successful, number one. But B, it's also going to demonstrate to your people that like you care about them and that you want them to succeed. And I don't know if you've ever been in a position where you feel like your manager wants you to succeed and wants you to win, but it's a pretty darn good feeling from my own lived experience and from people that I've talked to. And so if we could start there, and I know that we can do that because I know managers who do that for their people. We just have to figure out how we get more of them.
You're right, though. There's a lot of managers out there that shouldn't be managers.
Well, that too. Whole other problem that we need to address and people are working on. But yes, that is also another like aspect of it. But similar to the point though, I think that should be what we look for in our managers, right? Like how
Right.
are you how are you putting people in positions to succeed so that you can succeed and so that they can succeed?
Yeah, 100%. And then to the same effect, what are you experiencing,
Mm-hmm.
maybe people should stop doing because it's not really helping the sentiment and work.
What should they stop doing? Oh, where do we be? Where do we begin?
Common something, some things that maybe if you're listening today,
Yeah.
thinking about your people.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, if you're listening in, you should definitely tell us one or two things that if your manager stopped doing them would make your life better or make your work enjoyable or allow you to be more productive. So I think one thing that kind of comes up for me, and I am not a psychologist, but I know directionally some of these things, but if we could just limit the amount of things that we try to make people comply to, that would be really, really helpful. Now, laws, yes, like that.
Yeah.
Fully advocate anything related to the law, absolutely. But the easiest example to pick on is mandating people going back to the office or anything like that. What we know from just human nature is that most of us don't really like being
Told what to do.
mandated or told what to do.
Yep.
And if you look at the data, at least so far, at least from people who are, when they interview people and ask them about their feelings about return to office, you will find that the people who tend to be the most engaged are the ones who have the least amount of things that are being mandated on them, or the ones who feel like they have the most amount of choice. Right. And I think if we thought about that at an individual level, like that might kind of like make sense, right? Like, would you rather be told what to do or be given an option? And I think for many things that we probably prefer the latter. And so to the degree that managers and leaders have the agency to like actually, be more thoughtful about what they actually mandate and comply, I think that would be a really, really good choice. And then I know this is an easy one, but I know it's going to win some points with the audience. Meetings, if we could just I think about all the things that sometimes look, no one wants to go to work to do a bad job, but like there are things that get in the way from people from actually being able to do their jobs, meetings being one of them. And so if you want less things to comply to and want less meetings, just let us know in the comments, because I have a feeling at least one or two of you might think that way, but I'm sure there are other things that are out there too.
Such good points, Al. And the meeting one is funny, but like not, because you think that with more productivity tools that we have, that we would be getting more efficient, but it's almost like with people working all over the place across the globe, it's like more meetings. We've kind of had this adverse effect.
Yes.
And people, it's like, oh, well, I like let's hop on a quick call, hey, it was like, instead of us typing back and forth for an hour.
Yes.
But that practice is, it's a real one. It
is. And hopefully, I don't know if you've had this experience, but at least as an entrepreneur now, having more agency over that has been a godsend for my productivity.
Like, I don't do 8 a.m. calls ever, and I won't unless it's absolutely necessary.
Yes.
It's not happening. Yeah. Oh man. Well, Al, this has been such a lovely conversation. I think, we've talked today about the importance of building that brand and advocating for yourself inside of a company, having a perspective, and then what does it take to really create culture, some best practices, some do's and don'ts, and then our own journey a bit, Al, and both of us, if you are listening today and you're at a company and maybe you're exploring going out on your own, reach out to us. We've done it, and you can do it too.
Yes, absolutely.
You can do it too. Like, all is possible, so I just want to say thank you for being here. Where can people follow you and just make sure that they stay in touch?
Yeah, Rachel, this has been so much fun. People can follow me and find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Al D or linkedin.com/it's Al D. So feel free to connect with me there. And if you're interested in my podcast, you can go type in The Edge of Work wherever you get your podcasts.
Perfect. All right. Well, please check him out. Thank you so much for listening, watching today. Write some, give us some feedback, questions in the comments, and I'll be seeing you all soon. Thanks, Al, for hanging with me.
Thank you so much, Rachel. This was fun.